I was lucky enough to have the Battletoads Bend-Em figures. Growing up playing my NES and my copy of Battletoads. Trying to play it anyway. But these were a very lucky find because toys and things of video games back then was actually very rare. But the concept behind the game was kind of doing a Ninja Turtle-esque franchise attempt, so they had a little bit of merchandise to go along with the game. They were lucky the game was like pretty popular and well made, kind of fed some of it, but they did try to do a cartoon series. Didn't quite go anywhere. It's not one I got to see as a kid or anything, but I would have saw that tape. I definitely would have wanted to watch it though. Probably would have been a little disappointed. So I wanted to go over these. Mine, of course, were played with quite a bit. They came out in 1991. So the packaging says the figures on the back are printed with 1992. Still only that first game coming out before some of the other things like the arcade games and things like that. So we got Rash here. It's interesting on the box art, they're all kind of the same. And here the figures really gave them all their different looks and personalities. And sizes, with Rash being the smallest figure. With the shades you never saw in the game either, playing as him as player 1, I believe. Because player 2 should have been Zitz. Which I always thought was weird because I think Zitz is supposed to be like the leader. But you always played as Rash the very first game. It has a really classic green, almost like the Ninja Turtle figures like Raphael, even with some red muscle bands there trying to show off his flex. And he's got this kind of spiky knee pads that you see in the game art as well. The only problem is these are bendems instead of just real action figures, and if you're not familiar with bendems, they're just kind of soft-ish, kind of rubbery plastic, and inside here is going to be a wire frame. You can do a little bit of posing, but if you do it too much, that wire frame will rip out. So you kind of have to be careful, and they can't bend too far, so he's kind of stuck in his flexing pose there. But they had a lot of different color and variation and still had all the shape and everything to them. He's got his toady pattern on him as well. I loved having toys of the games I was playing. So these were really fun to kind of have a game universe in my toy world. We got Zitz here. He has a little bit more gear he's got on his wrist. He has the gloves and stuff there. A belt, and he has his spiky kind of knee pad things. Different shade for him and a little bit bigger. I was very ready for action figures even then, but they went the cheaper route with bendems, which I suppose is lucky because when I found all three of these, they were cheap enough you could buy all three, or, you know, beg your parents to buy all three anyway. They would have been, you know, maybe only a few dollars versus like maybe double or triple the price like an action figure comparatively. So this Just Toys company made a lot of other franchise figures with the bendems. They were just cheaper options than the action figures, or sometimes like these Battletoads, it was the only option, so you just had to go for it if you wanted some kind of toy-like figure of the character. But mostly it was things that had other toys and stuffed animals and stuff, so they were just a cheaper option. You know, could put them in convenience stores and stuff to stock them easily instead of a toy store having the action figures. But again, he's kind of stuck in a T pose there because you can't really bend him that much. It's very limited how far he's going to go. If I do it too far, that wire frame is probably going to burst out. And apparently these are a little expensive. I didn't realize I had such treasures in my collection. On card, they go for quite a lot, like hundreds of dollars. But again, it's early video game merchandise. They didn't do that very often. They didn't just put out Zelda games and have all these toys and stuff alongside of it. That's even Nintendo not doing a whole lot of merchandise, let alone, you know, a company that's putting out a game that not every single person is going to be able to purchase for their system. So they didn't know how popular these things were going to be at the time. And the biggest and heaviest of them, we got Pimple. Got his big spiky wristbands and knee pads on him. It's kind of funny then that you just kind of saved him in the first game. You didn't even get to play as him as the heavy hitter. But here they gave him his unique brown color and then the big shape and size. Again, he's stuck in a T-pose and he's very thick, so he's really not posable at all, but I still like to have these to play with back then because I could punch on stuff. You didn't have any of the enemies or anything from it, so you kind of had to do a little mix and match with what you had to play around. I tried to do a little bit of game universe kind of stuff, you know, maybe get out those Mario McDonald's toys or something like that. Had a little Link figure that was not quite a Bend-Em, but just a little PVC figure. Tried to do my own Smash Bros before it was a thing, but he's very hefty and solid compared to even the others. So I think they look pretty awesome. I like that they gave them their identities like pretty early on, even though it wasn't really portrayed in the game that way. Resh and Zitz were just kind of the same with like a little bit different tint to them, and then Pimple was just in like a few little quick cutscenes because he was who you were saving along with the princess in the game. So it's cool having these early on. I kind of knew the real kind of shape and character of the Battletoads even back then, playing it on NES. Before other games came along, kind of gave them these personalities in the games, like the arcade stuff where you could kind of have all the different moves depending on which one you pick to play as. The game was definitely one I worked my Game Genie quite a bit back in the day just so I could see all of the game. I think I've beaten every level like individually using the Game Genie, but never all together in one big run or anything. Just warp to one level and have your infinite lives and like try to beat it. I really liked just the beat 'em up part. If you could kind of do 2-player and just punching the guys was really fun, but all the vehicle stuff was just so difficult, especially if you had 2 players, both of you had to do it. Just made it harder to do 2-player. So it was always fun to pop in and play the first few levels, but it wasn't one we could get very far in playing 2-player at all. But a classic one I kind of put up there with like all the Nintendo made games like Mario and even Mega Man, and I put Battletoads kind of up there as like absolute NES classics and royalty of the system. I think the legend kind of lives on even though they didn't really do a ton of other games after this. Didn't quite turn into the big franchise that maybe it seemed like it would have been off the NES success. So typically I'm doing 90s action figures, but these Bend-Ems that I usually hate just because they are cheaper and just not very posable or anything. The only option for Battletoads there, possibly some bootleg kind of things that were action figure-esque, but for official merchandise, the Bend-Ems were the only ones. So this is one Bend-Em set I endorse as pretty awesome. It was a lot of fun to play with, and now it's awesome to have on my shelf, like for a collection too, just to represent the games of the time, outside of usually just movies and cartoons and things like that a lot of the toy lines covered. Definitely never would have thought they'd be some sort of super rare collectible thing, but I always played with mine and loved it. It was easier than playing the video game. You could win playing with the figures pretty easily. So if you love 90s action figures, typically, this is the place to be. I have lots of playlists and things you can check out, all sorts of different kinds. You want to go over the whole channel and search around, see all the different things that you recognize and maybe had as a kid yourself, or always wanted, or are just curious as to what they are. I take close looks at all these toys, because they're now my collectibles, just to remember that awesome time period. So hopefully I'll get to see you in the next video.